everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Foxy and this is Foxy Books and Planning. Today I'm doing another one of my 2021 kind of kickoff wrap-up planning videos. And specifically I'm going to be talking about my reading plans for 2021. Now I've already done my goals for the year. I will link that video in a card above. But in general, just to give you a reminder of what those goals are, is to read 85 books, read primarily from my existing book collection, and have a 50-50 split between audio materials and physical materials. And this is what I've done most years. I typically don't have specific reading plans, just the goals. And normally I would include something like read 5 contemporary fictions or 5 science nonfictions or something like that. However, I haven't always been the best at making specific genres a priority, and I typically forget the genre that I want to focus on, or the genre is something so far outside of my normal reading materials and my friend group reading materials that I don't naturally find books that I would be interested in those genres. So what came about is when I was reading in 2020, I realized that there are some areas in my personal collection that I'd like to focus on and some lingering reading challenges that I really needed to work on. So when I looked back at my notes in my collection, I came up with 2 challenges that I wanted to attempt this year and 2 personal collection goals that I wanted to focus on over the course of the year, in addition to those number goals that I talked about in my other video. We'll see how these go. One of them should be fairly straightforward and easy. The others less so, but we'll get into that right now. So my big challenge that I really want to make progress on this year is I have been trying to read NPR's 100 Best Science Fiction and Fantasy Novels for about 5 years now. The list was originally published in 2012, and I started working on reading through the list back in 2016. When I originally started working on the list, my original plan was to finish the entire 100 books within a year, and I thought that would be feasible because I thought I had read a good number of the books already on the list. Unfortunately, it wasn't a feasible goal. The number of Neil Stephenson novels alone would take a year to get done. It's like 5 or 6 of his books, and his books are insanely long. So as of today, which is New Year's Day 2021, yay, 4 videos in a day, guys. I have 22 books left out of my 100. And so it's really time for me to buckle down and get to work on these books. It is going to be difficult because I have left some of the mammoth books till the end, like The Silmarillion, Wizard's First Rule, Eye of the World, and I have like 3 Stephenson novels left. Please pray for me. But I just need to make progress this year and get closer to finishing the list so I can actually do a wrap-up at some point before I forget what half of the books were about. On the plus side, one of my goals that I'm going to talk about a little later in this video should help move this forward, as it's a tangentially related point of focus that I'll talk about more when I get to that. My other challenge for the year is I'm going to do a version of Emily Fox's, or Books with Emily Fox's, Goodreads Choice Awards Challenge. So she does every year where she'll read the winning book in most of the categories except for like poetry or children's and that kind of stuff. And she normally picks a few categories to focus on and try and read a number of the books out of that category. And then she does a video in December where she discusses the books that she read and whether or not she agrees that that book should have won or not. I really do like this concept, and I want to use it to discover some new books or authors that I typically wouldn't find. But for my sanity with everything else going on, I've decided that I'm just going to stick to reading one category, and I'll report back in December on my thoughts and winners in comparison to what the votes were. So for this, I did decide to look at the history and biography section. Typically, I find that the category is really interesting to me, and I don't naturally find a lot of history or nonfiction books on my own. I typically have to find them through either recommendations or other friends' Goodreads. So this is a good way for me to get my history fix for the year and also read about some things that I wouldn't typically read about otherwise. So there are 20 books that are listed on the Goodreads page. And I'm not sure I'll be able to get all 20 books in, just because I will probably be needing to get the majority of these from my libraries. And the libraries for popular books will have longer wait times. And I know that I'm not interested in 2 of the books. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the top 10 books in the category with a small caveat, and I'll get to that in a second. So the top 10 books in the history and biography section were the winner, which was Cast: The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. The Splendid and the Vile, A Saga of Churchill, Family, and Defiance During the Blitz by Eric Larson. A Black Woman's History of the United States by Dana Ramey Berry and Callie Nicole Gross. House of Kennedy by James Patterson and Cynthia Fagan. 999, The Extraordinary Young Women of the First Official Jewish Transport to Auschwitz by Heather Dunn McAdam and Caroline Moorhead. You Never Forget Your First, A Biography of George Washington by Alexis Cole. The Fight of the Century, Writers Reflect on 100 Years of Landmark ACLU Cases by Michael Shambin and Eilert Waldman. The Address Book, What Street Addresses Reveal About Identity, Race, Wealth, and Power by Deirdre Mask. His Truth is Marching On, John Lewis and the Power of Hope by John Meacham. And The Lincoln Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill America's 16th President and Why It Failed by Brad Metzler and Josh Mensch. So like I said before I did the list, I know for a fact I'm not interested in 2 of the books, and those 2 books are in the top 10. Those would be Never Forget Your First and The Lincoln Conspiracy. I've previously read a biography of George Washington. It was before I started keeping track of my reading on Goodreads, and I have no desire to read another biography of George Washington right now, especially since I did finish Ron Chernow's Hamilton biography last year, and that had enough Washington in it for me for now. So that one is off the list. And then The Lincoln Conspiracy, I have no intention of ever trying to read this book. I did try reading the first conspiracy, which is by the same writing team and is supposed to be about a plot to assassinate George Washington. I ended up DNFing it. The whole basis of the book was that there's one scrap of paper and a rough rumor that's talked about in a couple letters that there was this plot to assassinate George Washington, and Metzler and Mensch turned this into a 400-page nonfiction book. If the book had had the academic rigor of some of the other books said about that time, if it had had the rigor of Chernow or the other Washington biographies I've read, or any of the other kind of similarly set time period books, it would have been fine. I would have pushed through, but the writing style tried to make history, and not even substantiated history, just a rumor in a scrap of paper and one letter, into a 400-page suspenseful thriller. It irritated the crud out of me. This is history. We know what happens. So either just write about the conspiracy, or if there's not enough for you to write a nonfiction book about it, write a historical thriller. That would have been fine. But from what I've seen, The Lincoln Conspiracy is basically the same format, just swap out Abraham Lincoln for George Washington, and that's a hard no for me. I'm not wasting my time on something I know I'm not going to like. So instead of those, I'm going to be pulling 2 of the lower ranked books that are interesting to me in. So that I'm going to pull in book number 12, which is Countdown 1945, The Extraordinary Story of the Atomic Bomb and the 116 Days That Changed the World by Chris Wallace. And book 13, Dead, Famous, and Unexpected History of Celebrity by Greg Jenner. If I have extra time at the end of the year, I'll try and squeeze in Agent Sonia by Ben McIntyre, which is book number 11, but I make no promises, and I don't really want to read about World War II spies right now. So those are those 10 books. I will probably start putting them on hold from the library here soon, just to see what I can get and what I'm going to need to buy. But here's hoping this goes a lot easier than when I attempted to do this not officially last year. All right, so my third plan is the first of my collection plans, which is to work on my Dick Francis collection. So when my grandparents downsized their home to move into a retirement community, my grandmother asked me if I wanted anything out of the house. And since I knew her reading tastes, I asked for her collection of Dick Francis novels. And she sent them, all 40 of them. I've had them in my possession since 2016, and I haven't read a single one yet. And I'm planning to change that this year. So my plan for this is to read the first 12 books. So one book per month. And so I have them arranged on my shelf in publication order. And I'm going to read them in publication order. So one a month should be fairly straightforward. To my knowledge, my understanding, is that all of Dick Francis's books are mysteries, and they all involve horse racing in some way. So I don't think I'll have an issue with it unless there's a hard nope on the writing style. But a lot of the early books in the collection are the mass market paperback versions, and they're a whole lot shorter, so I think they'll be easier to get through and faster to get through. Once they transition to hardback and they get longer, all bets are off, but we will see. So fingers crossed, I like his writing style. Fingers crossed, I like the way he builds mysteries. And let's hope I don't have a collection of 40 books that I'm never going to read. All right, so my last challenge plan for myself is to clear some space on my physical TBR shelf, which is included in all of my reading. A picture of it is included in all of my reading wrap-up thumbnails, and I'll throw up what it currently looks like here for you and for posterity. So my goal, this is the goal that I think working on my NPR list will help with. So there's about 30 books total on the shelf right now, including the 3 that are on top of the nightstand. And about 8 of them are on my NPR list. So that should get me about quarter of the way through that shelf. And some of the others are books that I was really excited to read. So I'm hoping they will be easy, quick books, and I will make some good progress on my shelf along with my Dick Francis at the same time. I'm going to have a similar goal for my TBR shelf, which is 1 book per month or 12 total for the year. So hopefully these 4 plans shouldn't be problems. The only problem I can foresee is if I lose track of them over the year, and I'm going to hope that I don't lose track. And I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to integrate kind of a tracker into my monthly reading wrap-ups so that I can show you all the progress I'm making on these plans, along with all the books that I'm reading and all of my thoughts and all of that kind of stuff. But in order to get these 4 goals really up off the ground and moving, I'm really going to have to be careful with how many new release books I request from NetGalley, in Book Siren, and the ARCs and new releases that get hyped and everybody thinks I should read. So I really need to focus on my reading this year and less on the new things coming out. So fingers crossed, everything goes to plan with these. I will check in with y'all at the end of the month in my reading wrap up to let you know how I'm doing with everything. And with that, please do comment down below with your thoughts on these plans. Are they too ambitious, too simple, too crazy? I'd love to hear your opinions. Always, I'd love to have conversations in the comments. Please do remember to like and subscribe, and I will talk at y'all in another video. Bye!